Did these gunslingers truly live up to their deadly reputations, or were their legends crafted from tales taller than the Wild West itself? Welcome to a journey back in time to the rugged, lawless frontier where legends were born and lives were decided in the blink of an eye. In this video, we're diving deep into the top 10 deadliest gunslingers in the history of the American Old West. These aren't just names etched into history, they're larger-than-life figures whose tales of grit, skill, and sheer audacity have captivated generations. From outlaws who ruled with fear to lawmen who walked the fine line between justice and vengeance, each gunslinger on this list left behind a legacy drenched in both myth and truth. But who were they really? What drove them to become symbols of survival in one of history's most unforgiving eras? Stick around as we unravel the stories of these infamous sharpshooters, uncovering the chaos, betrayal, and heroism that define their lives. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single second of this countdown. But before we continue, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Number 10. William Curly Bill Brocious. Curly Bill earned his nickname because of his thick, curly black hair. Following Old Man Clanton's death, Curly Bill took over as the leader of the Cowboys, a notorious gang of cattle rustlers in Tombstone, Arizona. For a period, Curly Bill also acted as a tax collector under Cochise County Sheriff John Behan. Known for his heavy drinking, his behavior often became more unruly when he was intoxicated. One night, while drinking with other cowboys, Marshal Fred White approached him and asked him to hand over his pistol. As Curly Bill was surrendering the gun, it accidentally discharged, injuring White. Fred White, who had a friendly relationship with Curly Bill, stated on his deathbed that he believed the shooting was unintentional. As a result, Curly Bill was acquitted of the charges, with Wyatt Earp testifying in his defense during the trial. However, the story did not end there. Tensions continued to escalate, and Wyatt Earp eventually confronted Curly Bill, leading to Curly Bill's death. This confrontation was fueled by Wyatt Earp's determination to avenge the murder of his brother, Morgan Earp. The events surrounding Curly Bill's life and death underscore the intricate relationships and the volatile nature of frontier justice in the Old West. Number 9. Sam Bass, Outlaw. Sam Bass started his life on a lawful path. After escaping from an abusive uncle, he secured work at a sawmill in Mississippi. Hoping to become a cowboy, he eventually traveled to Texas. However, after one season of cowboy life, he decided it wasn't suited for him. In 1876, Bass and a rough associate named Joel Collins drove a herd of longhorns north to sell them at higher prices. Instead of returning to Texas to pay the herd's owners, they kept the $8,000 profit for themselves. Bass and Collins wasted the cattle drive earnings on gambling and reckless spending in Deadwood. A few months later, they embarked on a new venture, stagecoach robbery. Despite robbing 7 stagecoaches, Bass and his gang didn't earn much money. Hoping for greater rewards, they shifted to train robbery. Their most notable heist was targeting the Union Pacific Gold Train from San Francisco, stealing over $60,000, the largest single robbery of the Union Pacific at the time. Bass's criminal career came to an end when he was wounded by Texas Rangers while attempting to rob a small bank in Round Rock. He succumbed to his injuries 2 days later, on his 27th birthday. Number 8. James Miller, commonly known as Deacon Jim, earned his nickname due to his consistent church attendance and abstinence from smoking and drinking. Despite his outwardly devout demeanor, Miller was one of the most deadly figures in the Wild West. He openly accepted murder contracts for financial gain, charging fees ranging from $150 to $2,000, a significant sum during that era. His preferred method involved ambushing targets at night while wearing a black frock coat that rendered him nearly invisible in darkness. Beneath the coat, he concealed a steel plate on his chest, an early form of bulletproof protection which enhanced his safety during ambushes. Official records credit Miller with 14 murders, though rumors and public speculation inflate that number to as many as 50. His criminal activities eventually led to his arrest in Oklahoma for the murder of A.A. Gus Bobbitt. The local community, distrustful of the judicial process, decided to take matters into their own hands. A group of citizens formed a lynch mob, taking Miller and others to an abandoned stable to face extrajudicial hanging. Before his execution, Miller made two final requests. He asked for his ring to be given to his wife, who was a cousin of the notorious outlaw John Wesley Hardin, and he requested to wear his hat during the hanging. In a final act of defiance, Miller exclaimed, "Let her rip," before stepping off the box. The bodies of Miller and the other three men remained hanging for several hours until a photographer was found to capture the moment. This somber event highlighted the harsh realities of frontier justice and solidified Miller's reputation as one of the most feared gunslingers in the Old West. Number 7. Belle Starr, Myra Maybelle Shirley. Shirley was born in Carthage, Missouri. As a young girl, she attended the Carthage Female Academy, where she excelled academically and became a skilled pianist. Growing up, Maybelle was acquainted with Cole Younger and later developed a friendship with the James brothers. The James Younger gang frequently used the Shirley family farm as a hideout, exposing Maybelle to a life of crime. She eventually earned the nickname the Bandit Queen. In 1866, Maybelle married Jim Reed, a former Confederate Army guerrilla. Reed initially tried to live an honest life as a farmer, but when this failed, he allied with the Starr family, a Cherokee group notorious for horse theft. Alongside the Jameses and Youngers, they orchestrated numerous heists. Jim Reed's involvement in these criminal activities led to his capture. While attempting to flee from a deputy sheriff, he was killed. Following her husband's death, Maybelle continued her criminal activities, organizing robberies and fencing stolen goods. She became known for her ability to manipulate lawmen through bribery or charm to achieve her objectives. In 1880, she married Sam Starr, and 2 years later, both were convicted of horse theft. They were released after serving a year in prison and quickly resumed their unlawful ways. Maybelle's life ended abruptly on February 3, 1889, just 2 days before her 41st birthday. While riding home from the general store, she was fatally shot. The identity of her killer remains unknown to this day. Number 6. The Sundance Kid. Harry Alonzo Longabaugh, better known as the Sundance Kid, earned his nickname after being caught and convicted of horse theft in Sundance, Wyoming. Although he was reputed to be a gunfighter, there is no definitive evidence that he ever killed anyone. After his release from jail in 1896, he teamed up with Robert Leroy Parker, famously known as Butch Cassidy. Together they formed the Wild Bunch Gang, which became infamous for orchestrating the longest string of successful train and bank robberies in American history. As the Pinkerton Detective Agency intensified its pursuit, Sundance, Butch, and Etta Place fled the United States to seek refuge in Argentina. It is widely believed that the Sundance Kid met his fate during a confrontation in Bolivia. However, some family members claim he returned to the United States under the alias William Henry Long and lived in Duchesne, Utah until 1936. To uncover the truth, Long's body was exhumed for DNA testing, but initial results failed to confirm the connection between Long and the Sundance Kid. Despite this setback, researchers continue investigating alternative theories about his identity. Number 5. Butch Cassidy. Born Robert Leroy Parker. On April 13, 1866, in Beaver, Utah, he was the eldest of 13 children in a Mormon family. At age 13, Parker began working on Jim Marshall's ranch in Circleville, Utah. There, he met Mike Cassidy, a cattle rustler who became his mentor. Cassidy gave Parker his first gun and taught him how to shoot. Inspired by his mentor, Parker adopted the alias Butch Cassidy as he transitioned into a life of crime. In tribute to his mentor, Bob eventually adopted the surname Cassidy. Parker's first brush with the law occurred when he went to town to purchase a new pair of overalls. Finding the general store closed, he let himself in, chose a pair that fit, and left a note promising to return and pay for them later. Despite his honesty, the merchant reported him to the sheriff, but Parker was acquitted of any wrongdoing. On June 24, 1889, Parker and 3 accomplices robbed the San Miguel Valley Bank in Telluride, making off with $21,000. With his share of the money, he purchased a ranch near the notorious hole-in-the-wall outlaw hideout. By this time, he had adopted the name Butch Cassidy. However, Cassidy was not particularly successful as a rancher, and it is widely believed that the ranch served as a cover for his illicit activities. In 1896, Cassidy became the leader of the infamous Wild Bunch, a group of criminals that included some of the most notorious outlaws of the Wild West. Under his leadership, the Wild Bunch carried out a series of high-profile robberies, solidifying their place in outlaw history. Similar to the Sundance Kid, there is uncertainty surrounding Cassidy's death. While it is widely believed that he died in Bolivia, some relatives claim he returned to America and lived out his later years under a different name. Number 4. Thomas Coleman Younger. Cole Younger's life took a dramatic turn when his father was killed by Union Captain Wally. The elder Younger had severely beaten Wally for making inappropriate advances toward Cole's sister. This personal tragedy had a profound impact on Cole, who was already a member of Quantrill's Raiders. Following his father's death, Cole joined the Confederate Army. It is unclear when Cole transitioned into a life of banditry, but his name first appeared as a suspect in the 1868 robbery of Nimrod Long & Company, a bank in Russellville, Kentucky. Cole and his brothers later formed a gang with Jesse and Frank James. Together, they carried out a series of stagecoach, train, and bank robberies across Missouri, Kentucky, Kansas, and West Virginia. The Younger brothers' criminal enterprise came to an end on September 7, 1876, during a failed bank robbery. To avoid a death sentence, Cole, along with his brothers Jim and Bob, pleaded guilty. They were sentenced to life in prison but were paroled in 1901. After his release, Cole Younger toured the nation with Frank James, giving speeches about their experiences in the Wild West. During this period, Cole embraced Christianity and publicly renounced his past criminal activities. He passed away peacefully 4 years later, carrying 11 bullets in his body, remnants of his tumultuous past. Cole Younger's story highlights the complexities of loyalty, family, and redemption in the backdrop of the Old West. His later years spent advocating for a reformed life provide a stark contrast to his earlier notoriety. Number 3. John Wesley Hardin. Born to a Methodist preacher, he was named after the founder of the Methodist faith. At just 14 years old, he became involved in a violent incident when he stabbed a boy who had been taunting him. This act marked the beginning of a troubled and violent life. A year later, during a playful wrestling match with an ex-slave named Mage, an altercation broke out. Hardin accidentally scratched Mage's face, prompting Mage to seek revenge. The following day, Mage ambushed Hardin on a path. In self-defense, Hardin fired 3 warning shots, but Mage continued advancing. Ultimately, Hardin was forced to shoot Mage, resulting in his death. Given that many Texas state police officers were former slaves and Hardin was a former Confederate soldier, he faced considerable prejudice and had little chance of receiving a fair trial. To evade capture, he went into hiding. Despite a warning from his brother about the police closing in on his location, he chose to confront the situation directly. In a dramatic encounter, he shot all 3 policemen pursuing him and managed to escape. After several arrests and escapes, he eventually made his way to Abilene, Kansas, where he became acquainted with the renowned lawman Wild Bill Hickok. During his stay at the American House Hotel in Abilene, he encountered a disruptive stranger in the adjacent room. Disturbed by the noise, he fired 2 shots into the ceiling. The first shot woke the man, while the second resulted in his death. Following this incident, he fled through the window and returned to Texas. His life of evasion continued with numerous run-ins with the law until he was finally apprehended. Convicted of his crimes, he was sentenced to 17 years in prison. During his incarceration, he took the opportunity to complete a law degree and upon his release began practicing law. He met his end under tragic circumstances when he was shot in the back of the head while engaged in a game of dice. Number 2. Billy the Kid remains one of the most legendary figures of the Old West. His life has been the subject of numerous books, films, and songs, but the true story behind his legend is less sensational than often portrayed. While he is frequently depicted as a ruthless outlaw, the reality was more nuanced. Billy the Kid entered a life of crime largely out of necessity rather than a predilection for violence. Those who knew him personally described him as brave, resourceful, honest, and possessing a good sense of humor. Under different circumstances, he might have led a more conventional and successful life. Although it is widely claimed that Billy the Kid killed 21 people, 1 for each year of his life, historical evidence suggests that he was likely responsible for only 4 deaths. Billy the Kid's involvement in violent incidents was relatively limited compared to his larger-than-life reputation. In 1877, Billy began working as a cattle guard for rancher John Tunstall. Tunstall was involved in a bitter conflict with local merchants Lawrence Murphy and James Dolan. On February 18, 1878, Tunstall was shot by Murphy's men while he was herding cattle alone and unarmed. This event sparked what became known as the Lincoln County War. In the wake of Tunstall's murder, Billy and other ranch hands were deputized and given warrants to pursue the Murphy faction. They formed a group known as the Regulators. Unfortunately, due to widespread corruption, the governor supported Murphy, turning the Regulators into outlaws in the eyes of the law. After a dramatic escape from jail and several years of evasion, Billy the Kid was eventually shot and killed by Sheriff Pat Garrett while hiding in a friend's home. Over the years, various individuals have claimed to be Billy the Kid, but the likelihood of his survival or misidentification of his body remains low. Billy the Kid's story reflects the complexities of the Old West, where personal vendettas, political corruption, and survival intersected in a turbulent era. Number 1. Jesse James. Jesse James was born in Missouri and, alongside his brother Frank, served as a Confederate guerrilla fighter during the American Civil War. After the conflict ended, the James brothers, together with the younger brothers, formed the notorious James Younger Gang. This group engaged in a series of high-profile robberies targeting banks, stagecoaches, and trains. In 1869, the gang committed a robbery at the Daviess County Savings Association in Gallatin, Missouri. During this heist, Jesse mistakenly shot and killed a clerk whom he had misidentified. This tragic error led him to seek redemption through correspondence with John Newman Edwards, the editor and founder of the Kansas City Times. Edwards, who had also supported the Confederacy, was sympathetic to the James brothers and published numerous articles portraying the gang in a favorable light. Through these publications and Jesse's letters asserting his innocence, Jesse James gained significant public attention and was even celebrated as a folk hero. Although Jesse James was already well known during his lifetime, his fame intensified after his death. He was killed by Robert Ford, a member of his own gang who shot him in the back of the head while James was at home. This act of betrayal added a dramatic and tragic chapter to James's story. In honor of her son, Jesse's mother, Zerelda James, chose a poignant epitaph for his grave: "In loving memory of my beloved son." As we close the chapter on the top 10 deadliest gunslingers in the history of the American Old West, one thing becomes clear. These weren't just men and women with quick draws and deadly aim. They were complex figures shaped by a brutal, unforgiving time. Their stories blur the line between legend and reality, leaving us to wonder how much of what we know is truth and how much is myth. Now it's your turn. Who do you think was the most fascinating gunslinger on this list? Did we miss someone you believe deserves a spot among the deadliest? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep this conversation alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into history's most thrilling tales. The Wild West may be long gone, but its legends will forever spark our imagination. Until next time, keep wondering and keep exploring.